Our first speaker today is Tania Marien. She's the host and producer of the podcast Talaterra, which features independent environmental educators and who are fostering connections between people and nature. She's going to talk with us a little bit about the trends that she sees in this population that she works closely with, particularly and how they're adapting to pandemic times and what needs she sees and hears from them. Tania, thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to have you.
Oh, thank you.
Turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Calliope. And thank you to all of you who are here attending this morning. I appreciate your interest in this topic in my project. Currently, I am investigating how independent professionals in environmental education and related fields contribute to their community. I am investigating who they are, what they do, how they do it, and where they do their work. So today I'd like to talk to you about the new posture of freelance environmental educators and considering COVID and how things have changed for them in the field. Before I get into the focus of today's conversation, I'd like to provide a little bit of background information and a little bit of context. I came to this project because of things that I was observing with my previous endeavor. In my previous endeavor, I had an educational website and a bookstore that accompanied that website, and I participated in environmental education events and events for book festivals and events for teachers and librarians. And the focus of my work there was to encourage an interest in plants through art, science, and interpretation. And as I participated in all sorts of different events, I would cross paths with other independent educators and other independent environmental educators and other people who did all sorts of other creative things independently. And I often wondered who they were and what they did, but I never got a chance to have conversation with them because, if you do events, you bring all your stuff, you set up your canopy, you set yourself up, you do what it is you're there to do, and then you fold everything down and then you're gone. And so there was never a chance to speak with these individuals. Oh, when I closed that endeavor down at the beginning of 2018, I immediately switched my focus to this project because I had wondered a lot about it and about this topic. And so I finally took action in the beginning of 2018. And in 2018, I launched the Freelance Condition and Lifelong Learnings in Community project. And it's a long name, I know. And this project has, I've learned so much from this project. And I launched this project with a survey, and with the survey in which 43 people completed the survey, which was very helpful. And I also started talking with people. And out of this project came 2 initiatives. Right now, the initiatives are my podcast, the Talaterra podcast, and the co-working space, virtual co-working space for independent professionals who work in environmental education. So as I said, I started this project with a survey, and I just started asking questions. And this survey gave the hunch that I had, the hunch that there was a story here, gave it some traction. And I'm going to share just a little bit of what I've learned from the survey. One of the questions I asked was how freelancers got their start in informal education. And I've been able to, so far, categorize their responses put their responses into 4 categories. Okay, some educators got their start in informal education because of an event. One example is a life-changing. Some events were life-changing, like retirement, the loss of a job, or the downsizing of their teaching position. But others came to the field because of an unexpected event, such as being invited to participate in a Girl Scout troop, for example. Some of the educators came to this field of informal education because of the work that they were doing. Some were working as interpretive naturalists at a nature center or a national park or a state park. Others were working at museums. Some of the educators I surveyed came to informal ed through some type of learning experience. One example is of someone who took the Master Naturalist program and just got hooked and just continued on exploring more into the field. Another person started a blog when they started grad school. And when they were studying their master's, working on their master's thesis, they started a blog and were blogging every day about things that they were learning in their program. Others came to the field because of something that they saw that needed to be done. And so they launched their own project. One example is of a classroom teacher who didn't want to be in the classroom anymore. They wanted to transition out of the classroom and start teaching people about the ocean. Their background was in oceanography. And so they enrolled themselves into the Freelance learning program, free choice learning program at Oregon State University, and launched their career that way. Another person came to the field because they saw a lack in environmental education in their children's school. And so that's how they got started. In my survey, I asked freelancers what topics they address in their work. And you can see that I listed the usual subjects: plants, animals, landscapes, ecology, and you can see how they responded. And a lot of people, of course, talked about the environment, and then it was followed by plants and ecology and animals and other topics. The interesting response to this question has to do with the other section that you see at the bottom of the screen. What they taught me, or what they showed me in their response, is that they talk about the usual topics, but then also more than 50 other topics. So topics such as nature play, bird language, animal tracking, conscious consumerism, physics, maritime culture, systems thinking, and computer science. And so they address a wide variety of topics in their programs. I also asked the freelancers where they worked. What type of venues do they work at? And so I listed the obvious: museums, nature centers, botanic gardens, zoos, and aquariums. And again, the most interesting part of this question has to do with the other section. When 32 of the 43 respondents filled in additional venues where they worked in the other section, and I have over 50, they listed over 50 other venues. So venues such as libraries and community centers and festivals and teacher professional development programs, book clubs, and civic centers, historic sites, and all sorts of other places. And their response to this question alone confirmed to me that my hunch was correct, that there was a story here, that there is a lot going on in communities that we don't know about, and that their work, the work of the independent educators, needs some attention. And it's just not showing up on the radar. I also asked the freelancers in the survey how they felt about their financial well-being. And I asked if if their financial well-being is stable. And 65%, and I'm collapsing the categories, the responses here, 65% say that their fiscal well-being is not stable. Okay. I also asked what they wanted to move themselves forward. What is it that they thought that they needed to continue their initiatives? And some of their responses are predictable, like time and money. They also offered other needs that they had, like a livable wage and feedback about the materials that they were creating. They wanted administrative help to help with all of the many hats that they wear. They wanted to be taken seriously by others who did not work independently like they do. They wanted some support like what others who have a full-time job have. They wanted financial support to offer some of their workshops for free, or at least to have that option to offer some workshops for free. They wanted to be found easier by people, and they wanted more opportunities. That is, they wanted more work, more jobs. And one individual also said that they would like to have in place a belief that informal educators do make a difference in the lives that they touch without any academic pressure. And they wanted it to be understood that informal educators involve all of the senses in their work. The questions that I asked in my survey, some were multiple choice, but a lot of them were open-ended questions. And the generous responses that I received from educators in their long-form answers has been very helpful, and those responses have been key in informing my work. So what about now? How are things going for freelancers now in this field? Whether the freelancers are experienced and have an established position in the field, or whether they are starting out, they share some common concerns. Well, one, of course, is funding and cash flow and working for free or being asked to work for free. The freelancers I speak to, they are always on guard and kind of on the defensive of waiting to be asked to work for free. They are concerned about spending too much time learning new skills, considering how everyone's had to change course during this COVID event. And they're worried about spending too much time learning and not having enough time to be productive and to move themselves forward. Those who are new or early in their freelance career, and those who are now considering the freelance option, are trying to figure out what's next. And so they are having some of their concerns are positioning, business skills, how to figure out insurance and permits and sales tax if they sell something, how to put themselves online, how to have anything that has to do with technology, how to even start their initiative, that idea that they have in their head. How do they even start? Some of them are trying to figure out pandemic pods and teaching within their communities through this pod concept. Some are concerned about how to connect with their local school districts and where they can learn about working as a freelancer in this field, and where they can work with others who are also working in environmental education in this capacity. The better positioned are the people who I spoke with who have been working as a freelancer for many years are better positioned at this point. And what I found that they have in common is that they already had an online presence. They already have an audience for their work, and they are embracing technology eagerly. And a good example of this is the Amphibian Foundation. They had to move their critter camp, their in-person critter camp, online, and they moved themselves to OutSchool, and they reach 100 students a week, 100 children a week. They also moved their master herpetologist program online and had 240 people across the worldwide involved in the program. And so they are a great example of pivoting and embracing the tools that are available. The people who are in a better position during this time have established partnerships, and they continue to form new relationships. One individual said to me that they just say yes to every person who wants to have a conversation with them. They are saving money, and they keep building courses. New courses. They're seeing now, where they always worked in person, they're seeing now that building courses is not it's a good thing. And so you're going to balance now moving forward online engagement with their in-person engagement. One individual said that they offer some things for free when possible. Others have said that they continue to apply for grants, and they keep looking for grants so that they can continue to do their work. Others are working diligently to keep themselves accountable. And overall, what I'm seeing is that these individuals are using current assets to create new assets. And so if I were to state one takeaway, one lesson that, that I'm seeing and what I'm hearing from this group is that you need to build your own asset. So what's next for them? Those early in their careers and those exploring the freelance condition are moving forward and learning more about how to work this way. They're focused on networking opportunities and finding peer support. Those with existing careers and who are doing better than others are convinced, what I'm hearing is they're convinced that they're going to make it through 2020 without a problem. But 2021 is looking a little more uncertain for them. So why does my project matter outside of my wanting to bring attention to the work of the independent professionals in environmental education, wanting to tell their stories, wanting to explain to community organizations that there is another option here if they're looking for a community partner? One reason why this project matters is that the freelancers, people like you, the independent professionals, have a chance here to fill a gap that's existing in the field that this COVID situation has created. This report was published by the Lawrence Hall of Science just recently, and in April they sent out a survey to find out how COVID was impacting the field of environmental education. They sent this survey out to organizations. And the takeaway here for this report is that they found that by their estimates, that if organizations are not able to resume programming by the end of the year, then there's potentially 11 million learners who will have missed out on environmental education learning opportunities. And this is, and something else that they found out is that the field could shrink by more than half. And that would be, of course, a problem for, all sorts of reasons, as I'm sure that you can imagine. But I see this as independent educators have an opportunity to fill some voids here that being created by large organizations not being able to do some of their programming. This survey went out only to organizations and addresses only what's happening at the organizational level. I took the survey, and there are only a few questions that I could answer. And I reached out to one of the authors of this brief, who was then the contact person for the survey, and explained to her that there were others in the field, and that so then I invited her to join a conversation, a roundtable I happened to be having that week, and she joined. And so she was very interested in learning about who else is working in the field, especially independently and on a freelance way, as a freelancer. This brief is available to you free as a download. And here is the shortened link. I will include the shortened link on this slide so you can get a copy for yourself. It's very interesting report. If you'd like to learn more about this project, here are a couple other resources I'd like to share with you. One is an article I wrote about doing freelance interpretation through a podcast, and what the podcast is about and who it is who I feature on the podcast. And also highlights from this particular presentation are also included in this download, and there's a link there for you as well to copy, to get a copy for yourself. Okay. A lot of people have informed this presentation and other parts of my work during this time of COVID. Of course, so I wanted to take a brief moment to acknowledge them. The anonymous survey respondents who took the initial survey, who has informed this project for its entirety. I needed to thank them, and also the individuals who took time out of their days to talk to me and to be very frank in sharing how things were going for them since this pandemic started. If you'd like to learn more about this project, and if you would like to share your own story, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. I would love to speak with you. And so that I could, I'm out to speak with as many people as possible to better articulate what is happening at the community level. And so if you would like to share your story and contribute to that, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Tania. I'll pull Sarah up and she can run the Q&A section. Thank you so much. That was fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So a lot of the questions that people have for you is asking about resources and asking about sharing. So I'm wondering if you won't end up getting quite a few people taking you up on your offer to contact you through your email. But one good question here that people have is if you have any or if there were any practical suggestions from your survey respondents on how to connect to clients when folks are so distanced in these times.
Yeah. So the people who I spoke with, who already have working in this field independently for a long time, they are relying on their existing clients. They have a lot of work, and they have a lot of ongoing conversations. And some of them, when their current work is going to end, are going to, one mentioned they're going to fall back on LinkedIn. And one person, as I said, says yes to every conversation that they have. And it's really hard. And LinkedIn appears, I think is a good resource. But using it is everyone uses it differently. Sometimes some are very good at it and some are not. And I'm having a conversation with a LinkedIn strategist on for the podcast to talk about how environmental educators can best use LinkedIn and to reach out. Yeah.
So we ought to tune into the podcast, among other
So
things, right?
you can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
All right. Wonderful. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people's questions are, they're just kind of interested in resources. I mean, as you're just saying in this answer that you just gave us to this question, it's kind of networking and just talking about what works is maybe, and having those connections is as important as there isn't really a one thing or, a complex of matrices that's going to, or tactics that's going to get you where you need to go. So people who are down the road are looking to be environmental educators. Now, again, this is a little tricky question because we're in the middle of a pandemic, and so we aren't doing business as usual now. Trying to see down the road what you might do, it might be a little hard to predict. But do you have some general advice to somebody who's thinking about stepping into this and possibly at the overwhelmed stage?
Yeah, at the overwhelmed stage. I think, well, one place they can look is the National Association, the North American Association for Environmental Education, recently put out a guidelines about reopening schools and how to do work in that way, and so that's a good resource. Any of the guideline publications from NAAEE are good resources. Another, if you're anyone interested in having conversations, they're welcome to check out the co-working space to have conversations if they'd like to. Because there's a whole bunch of people who are trying to figure things out and working together. And so at this stage, with so much unknown, it's as you just mentioned, it's a lot of talking with others, and it is, quite frankly, a lot of kind of thrashing your way to clarity, right? To find out what's next, because that's kind of where we're at.
I like that phrase, and I think that's just it. And so those ongoing relationships and those ongoing conversations, we're all constantly adapting and figuring out what works for us in this place where each one of us are. And so, well, thank you. That's a good and thoughtful answer. So I think, again, as I said, there are a lot of questions about making those connections and making connections with partner organizations and whatnot. I think I'll close this question session for just the moment, but maybe both you and Cappy can just reiterate for people listening now how they might get some of these URLs or some of these links or some of these connections of resources again, so they can come back and check that out. And then just remind people and remind you that you can answer their questions in the ask a question section here.
No, I will do that.
Okay. Well, this has been illuminating. Thank you so much, Tania. And and Cappy, are you ready to jump back in? Yes, you are. Yay.
Thank you, Tania. That was fantastic. We'll close out, but I do want to remind everyone that you can access these replays till the end of August. So please feel free to do so. And Crowdcast is really an incredible platform. I was playing around yesterday. We can earmark the questions that have been answered live. So if you watch a replay, pop open the question bin and see if some of the questions you have were actually answered, and it will bring you to the exact spot where those were answered in the talk. So in addition, Tania will spend a little time after this filling out answers to questions in that same Ask a Question bin, but in text form. So all of these will remain as resources for you for the rest of the month. And I believe even the chat, you're able to scroll through and see the links that we post. So I know that our social media coordinator, Jen Deutscher, has been posting links throughout, and some of the other conference committee members have as well. So please do come back and use this as a resource. It's up all month. Okay? All right. Thank you so much, Tania. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
and your time. Thank you. Thanks, Sarah, for running this. We'll be back in a jiffy with Rachel Basie, our next presenter.
Okay.